this is one of the things, the one advantage to age, if you're reasonably observant, is you see people make mistakes and you don't even have to make them. You can just avoid other people's mistakes because you've seen so many. And if you look in the NFL, in any business, bad businesses tend to overcompensate for previous mistakes and reach. It's like the Jets giving Aaron Rodgers too much power because they missed on Zach Wilson, or the Browns paying Deshaun Watson a guaranteed contract, or the Giants, choosing Daniel Jones over Saquon Barkley. It's just bad organizations overcompensating for previous bad decisions. So the idea the Giants now think Jaxson Dart is the dude for the future in New York. Let me just ask you this. You ever notice that a lot of the quarterbacks that don't make it, you weren't paying a lot of attention to in college, and they suddenly got really hot after they stopped playing college football? E.J. Manuel, Blake Bortles, Paxton Lynch, Zach Wilson, Daniel Jones. We never talked about them when they were playing in college. Suddenly, when they stopped playing and they got a combine or films come out, everybody's like, oh, my God, it's Daniel Jones. I watched Daniel Jones play. I watched him play at Duke. Never thought he was a first-round quarterback. I didn't watch Paxton Lynch play in college. His games weren't on. Now, you could say, well, what about Josh Allen? I got a binder from Greg Cosell when Josh Allen was a junior in college at lousy Wyoming. He's like, this guy is a superstar in the making. Patrick Mahomes. People were doing, a year before Patrick Mahomes entered his last year of college, Brett Veach went to Andy Reid and said, watch this kid. So the smart teams in this league, they knew who Patrick Mahomes was. Brett Veach was a year ahead of everybody else in his division. They were like, look at this tape. And Andy's like, okay. And he kept bringing tapes to Andy. So he was not somebody that just suddenly got hot. But I say this about Jaxson Dart. His last 2 years with Lane Kiffin as a coach, and Ole Miss has big-time players. They went and bought big-time players. The last couple years, Jaxson Dart in the SEC, had he beaten Kentucky, they probably get into the playoff. How did he do against Kentucky? 17 points. How did he go against Bama, Georgia, and Florida the last 2 years? And by the way, Florida stunk, and Alabama had its worst team since 2007. How did he do against those teams the last 2 years with Lane Kiffin? More picks than touchdowns, 58% completion percentage. He won one game.
Okay. Let's talk about this. I think we're kind of having the wrong conversation here for many reasons. First and foremost, when there was earlier rumors about the Rams looking to draft Jaxson Dart as the quarterback to replace Matthew Stafford, in the next couple of years, it was nothing but praise from people. Truly, it was just like, oh, this would be such a good move. He'll be able to sit behind Stafford, and he's going to have, Sean McVay, etc., etc. And now it's like, oh, Jaxson Dart, we've never heard anything from him. And to Colin's defense, he's been, anti-Jaxson Dart. But, in terms of, the conversations that people are having about some of these players, the reality is that the NFL draft, for the most part, you're really only ranting and raving over one or two players each year in terms of quarterbacks, outside of it being some sort of stacked draft of some sort. But even last year, people were not ranting and raving about JJ McCarthy, about Michael Penix, about Bo Nix. Eventually you start talking about all these quarterbacks because you have to, because they're, it's the NFL draft. But even Jaden Daniels, there was no serious conversation about should Jaden Daniels go number one. Nobody was really having that conversation at all. And I know I did all these videos. I'm sure you can find a couple people here and there, but that was not the general conversation at all. There was more of a conversation about should the Chicago Bears trade their pick and keep Justin Fields, or draft a non-quarterback and keep Justin Fields. There was a more serious conversation about that than drafting Jaden Daniels, without a doubt. So kind of using this kind of like yardstick of, what are the conversations as a reference to how good someone is. I just, people criticize Joe Burrow because they're like, he only really had one good year. It was really only his final year that he really popped, And then in any of the conversations that people tried to talk about, even with Bo Nix, it was like, well, what did he do in his first couple of years? And it was like, I don't care what he did. And I remember being like, I don't care what he did when he was 19 years old, when he was 20 years old, like that, show me what he did in the last couple of years more than anything. And it was like, oh, well, he's been in college forever. And it was like, okay. So I don't know. I mean, even a quarterback like a Brock Purdy, who had, who has had success in the NFL. I know it hurts people to accept that, but the dude has had success in the NFL, and yet nobody was talking about Brock Purdy, obviously. I mean, who was talking about Dak Prescott, et cetera, et cetera. And don't get me wrong. Listen, those are outliers, right? We do know that, right? The average is not Tom Brady, Dak Prescott, even Jalen Hurts, second round Super Bowl MVP. Like, that's not necessarily the normal. So to a degree, I understand where Colin is coming from, but that's just not going to be my cutoff point for a quarterback. It's just not. Like, the college landscape is wild, quite frankly. And the way how some of these players get popular, I mean, I'm pretty sure Shedeur Sanders would not be talked about nearly as much if his last name was Shedeur Watson, Shedeur Johnson. All right, like that's just the reality. I mean, we know that. So, the discussions that some people have about other quarterbacks, I'm like, it only that only means so much. There's been plenty of quarterbacks, because he starts naming these names. Like, there's been endless quarterbacks that people have talked about for like years and years leading up to the draft, and they do nothing, and they fail, and they crack. I mean, like, let's just use we could probably use the biggest name, Tim Tebow. People were talking about Tim Tebow a lot. Whatever happened to Tim Tebow? I mean, there's just so many, Rosen. I mean, there's so many quarterbacks that people have talked about over the years, only to have it go nowhere, right? Only to have it go nowhere. But the other part about this is the Giants. Like, this is where all this stuff is such a mess. This is where part of me doesn't even want to cover draft stuff right now within these next couple of days because it's so chaotic. Colin's like, I saw this story. And I just saw a story that said that the Giants are looking to trade. They're fielding calls to trade their third pick. And same thing with the Browns. And it's like, well, that's interesting. Because then if the Giants do that, then they don't get Travis Hunter, Carter, or any other top. Like, if they trade out of that top pick. So it's just like, and Colin's here, and well, now they're gonna want to draft someone at 3, and then they're gonna trade up with their next pick, and it's just too chaotic, and there's too many smoke screens, too much nonsense, too many people. And I'm not saying Colin's doing this, but you definitely know some of the other networks, especially. They run with any whisper of a story because they got to talk about something, and it's just they're trying to milk. And this is now, we got Tuesday, Wednesday, and it's like, here we go. Thursday, I guess you're going to have some of that too, but it's just going to be a little bit different because that's like, the day of. But it's just like everyone's just trying to get quick, get as many Shedeur Sanders stories as you can. Let's milk the Jaxson Dart story. Abdul Carter whispers he's going number 1 overall. Come on, get on it. And it's just like, it's just too chaotic. It's too chaotic and not rooted enough in reality. And I just right, like, this whole conversation, I personally hate if we went and now talked all about Jaxson Dart. Oh, what would Jaxson Dart look like for the Giants? And the type of offense that Brian Dable wants to run, et cetera, et cetera. We talk all about it. And then there's the 3rd overall pick, New York Giants select Shedeur Sanders. And then I'm like, then I feel like I've wasted my life. I feel like I wasted your time. It just is, it just feels unproductive to me, which is why I'd rather have like a more general conversation about Jaxson Dart or just some of the moves that the Giants are looking to make. And I said this in my preview a couple weeks ago when there was whispers about them drafting someone with the third pick and then trading in, and this time it was to trade up to get Shedeur Sanders. This kind of proves the point that I'm making right now. And it was about for them to trade and now, draft Shedeur Sanders. And my whole argument was, guys, you need a quarterback. If you believe that Shedeur is the guy or Jaxson Dart is the guy, whoever, and that is the conclusion that you reach, then just draft that quarterback. Don't try to play any of these games unless you have the draft capital. And I don't really know. It's always kind of hard to predict like what type of trades a team can truly make. Like unless there's a way for you to truly draft like whoever, let's just say Travis Hunter at 3, and then you're able to make another trade that literally that there is 100% zero chance that someone else is now going to be able to get Jaxson Dart or Shedeur Sanders, whoever it is, because then you would really have to trade back up essentially to like top 8, top 7. I'd have to look at the list again because there's still a couple question marks. Maybe the Raiders draft a quarterback. Like you really don't know. Then I would be a little bit more open to that. But then again, now you would have to expend a ton of capital for that, a ton of resources for that. And so my whole logic is just like, get the quarterback. If you believe that Shedeur Sanders is truly the guy, or even Jaxson Dart, then just draft him. Don't try to play these games. You haven't been a good enough franchise to pull this stuff off. You just haven't. And you got to just get the layups then. So, to Colin's point, what he was saying before about, how some of these worse franchises overcompensate, et cetera, to me, trying to do all of these extra moves, that's overcompensating. That's trying to make up for mistakes of the past, which then can sometimes get you dig you even in a deeper hole. And it's just like you haven't shown the ability to navigate that right now. So just get the layups. Because if you are Brian Daboll and you are the GM of the Giants, right? It's they kind of talk about how, they're really on the hot seat, understandably so. It's like, well, if you just get the quarterback right, everything will be okay. Like if it's clear that Shedeur is the guy, Jaxson Dart's the guy, whatever, and you miss out on Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, but you got the quarterback right, it's going to be like, all right, we got the quarterback. We're good now. I mean, you would assume that you would have at least some run, right? Because especially if the quarterback's right, it means you're going to win some games. It means you're probably going to, be in a duel with the Eagles or the Commanders, and you're going to be like, see, we're right there. And Brian, they're not going to just now fire Brian Daboll with those types of games, competing for a wild card spot, maybe even getting a wild card spot, so like, and then you're going to look back at some of the decisions that their GM made, and you're like, yeah, obviously that Saquon was a bad move, but I don't know, he got, this guy and that guy, and he got the new quarterback. You kind of start to do the math, and you're like, all right, that was a mistake, and it was worse because of the Eagles winning the Super Bowl and that it was on Hard Knocks, but like, for the most part, he's actually made some pretty positive, like, you kind of start to kind of grow that picture. But you got to just kind of have to get the layups, though. Straight up. You got to just get the layups. So, I don't know. But it is funny to me how one day you hear that the Giants are going to trade to draft Shedeur Sanders, and then the same day that Colin's reporting this, you hear that they're going to consider trading to draft Dart, and then on ESPN.com, it's the Giants are fielding calls to trade back. And it's like, I don't know. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about the New York Giants potentially drafting and trading to get Jaxson Dart or trading back? Like, let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment. So whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here and absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're on our way to doing it. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.